Today I'm continuing my Food Dehydrating 101 series, and we're going to dehydrate a mirepoix, a wonderful seasoning base of onions, carrots, and celery that we're going to make shelf-stable. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest. I'm a former New York City girl, now living the simple life with my sweet husband here in the Texas Hill Country. And this channel is all about cooking from scratch, living naturally, and creating a cozy home using charming thrift store finds. So if you're like me and you want to live the simple life, subscribe to my channel and be sure to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. A mirepoix is a French word for basically a seasoning base just made up of these three vegetables, onions, carrots, and celery. And it can be the base for starting soups or really any dish that you want to put some flavoring in before you add in the main chicken or meat or whatever the case may be. But the nice thing about dehydrating it is that you can have it shelf stable and just scoop out a cup or a tablespoon or whatever you need whenever you're ready to cook with it. And you don't need to worry about going through all the chopping and peeling and prepping involved when you normally start a fresh mirepoix. But your dehydrated mirepoix will come together beautifully and be ready the minute you put it in the pan and add some liquid. Now what I'm going to do to get my vegetables ready to be the right size for the mirepoix that I want, I'm going to peel and chop my onions, I'm going to peel and chop my carrots, and then I'm just going to chop the celery. And I'm going to basically make almost a medium-sized dice, and I'm going to show you, so don't worry. And then I'm going to, once I have that all chopped up, I'm going to have different trays, some separate for the onions, some separate for the carrots, and some separate for the celery, just in case they dry at slightly different times. And I'm going to be drying in my electric dehydrator at 125 degrees Fahrenheit. And I just want to mention that I will be putting my dehydrator on a cart, which I live in Central Texas, so it's pretty mild here, which I'll be wheeling outside. If you are in a colder climate, you may want to put your dehydrator, if you're going to be doing it this way, in the garage, because when you dehydrate onions, it can have a pretty strong aroma, and you may not want to do that in your house. Now what I'm going to do to get started is, in terms of prepping the vegetables, I'm going to peel my onions and I'm going to dice them into about a ½ inch size. Now to prep the carrots, I'm going to peel them and I'm also going to dice them into about a ½ inch dice, no larger, and then I'm going to blanch them in boiling water for about a minute and then strain them, and then they'll get ready to be dehydrated. And for the celery, I'll do the same as I did with the carrots. No need to peel them, but I'm going to chop them into about a ½ inch dice, no larger, and then I'm going to plunge them into boiling water for about a minute and then drain them, and then they'll be ready to dehydrate. Now we're going to dehydrate the mirepoix two different ways. We're going to do one batch in the electric dehydrator and we're going to do another batch in the oven. Now we'll talk about the oven in a minute, but first let's talk about the dehydrator. Now you have your dehydrator tray, the mesh tray, and it's got a very fine mesh to it. So you can certainly put your vegetables right onto this. You can put your onions and your carrots and your celery on different trays, because we'll talk about that in a minute. Don't recommend mixing them together in the event that the carrot takes a little longer than the onion or the celery, or so on and so forth. So you're going to put all the same vegetable on one tray. And it's fine to just put it on the mesh like this, and it provides for excellent air circulation. If you're worried about anything sticking, or if it's very small or whatnot, you can certainly put it all on a silicone mat as well. Either way will be fine. Now for dehydrating in the oven, we're going to experiment. And we're going to have a tray of onion, a tray of carrot, a tray of celery, and we're going to dry them in the oven at 175 degrees. And I'm going to start checking them, about 4 hours, maybe even a little before that, and see how they're coming. Are they cooking or are they drying? I'm very curious, because I really want to see if we can do this without having to worry about leaving the oven cracked open. Well, I'm going to go ahead and prep all my veggies, get some in the dehydrator, some in the oven, and I'll bring you back when everything's dry and ready to package up and make shelf stable. Now before I put them in the dehydrator, I just wanted to quickly show you how I prepare each vegetable. As I said, I'm just going to peel the carrot because I think the color of the final product looks nicer. Now don't throw these out. Save these for when you make bone broth or regular broth or stock, whatever the case may be. So all I'm going to do now is just cut these into about 1/2 inch pieces, but again, or a 1/4 inch, either or. This is not an exact science, but you want them small enough so that they'll dehydrate well. So something like this, but if they come a little bigger, that's fine too. I brought my ruler here. This is Mom. This is from my homeschooling days. So this is about a 1/4, a little more than a 1/4 of an inch. But whoops. So just so you can see that, the size that I'm looking for. But, you know, even if you get it a little bigger and you get it about a 1/2 inch, that's going to be okay too. Okay, now I've got the celery. This is all washed, but this part down here that's discolored and kind of on the tougher side, that I'll save, and I'll put that aside for, as I said, bone broth, or stock. And I'm going to do the same with these leaves. I'm going to save those. And then what I'm going to do, just like I did with the carrot, to try and cut these, like I said, a 1/4 of an inch, a 1/2 inch. Just do your best. It's not an exact science. And we'll just show you. Again, let's see. Okay, it's a little more than a 1/4 of an inch. This is about... Yeah, they're all about a 1/4 of an inch. If they're a little bigger, that's fine too. Now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with the onion. I had mentioned earlier that you can certainly dice this into, you know, about 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch pieces. But I want to show you a little trick that I like to do that I think facilitates the drying process. Now what I like to do for the onion as a little shortcut is get a grater like this and use this large size, and then take my onion and grate it. And you'll just do it like this. And then you'll dehydrate these just like this, and they'll be nice little shreds of onion. Well, I have a lot to report. The first thing I want to say is, and I believe I mentioned this earlier, but I peeled the carrots and then I diced them, and then I parboiled them for about a minute or two. And then I diced the celery, and separately I parboil that. And the reason that I do that to both of these vegetables is they'll rehydrate easier than if I just dehydrate them raw. So that's just a little tip that I want to share. You can certainly rehydrate them, you can dehydrate them raw, but when you go to rehydrate them, you may have to let them soak a little bit. And I really want to be able to use these as a soup base, where I just throw them right in the pot and can add my bone broth or my stock, my broth, whatever I'm using, and start to make a soup. And also I want to be able to use them, whereas maybe I'm using them as a traditional mirepoix, and I want to put them into a frying pan and saute them up and get a nice flavor base in my frying pan. So I wanted these two to be able to rehydrate quickly. Now the onions you don't need to, they're so moist already, you don't really need to parboil those. They'll just dehydrate up, you know, on their own and then rehydrate quite well. Now, what happened in the oven? I had really hoped to have had a lot of success dehydrating the carrots and the celery in the onion and in the oven, but it didn't really work well. I have to be honest with you. And I tried some different temperatures. The lowest my oven will go is to 170. If the lowest your oven goes to 200, they're sort of cooking and it's sort of a mushy mess, and I don't recommend it. Going down to 170, I think I had said 175, only because that was sort of between the 150 and the 200. But I think most people's ovens either go as low as 200, 170, or 150. So the lowest my oven goes is 170. And even that, it was kind of a struggle. And you've got to make sure that they're really spread out very thinly. And you know, I have a small oven, you only have so many shelves. And you do kind of have to crack the oven, and you do have to move the baking sheet around a lot. And then they're drying out a little too much on the edge and not enough in the middle. So it's a little, I have to be honest with you, it's a little bit of a challenge. So I do think an easier way to do it is if you have a dehydrator, and one that has a lot of shelves so you can dehydrate a lot because they definitely need to be, you know, spread out thin and provide for good aeration and so on and so forth. And they do take at least 10 hours. So I had to allow 10 hours. You know, I was checking, you know, as I've told you in the past, often when I dehydrate things, I always check around 4 hours just to see what's going on. But they definitely needed 10. Now, they seemed dry at 8, but I wanted to put them for another 2 hours to really make sure they were really, really dry, because I want to be able to have this be shelf stable. So that's the tip that I would recommend. Use a dehydrator. Sorry for the oven folks, but you could do it in the oven, but it's really challenging. And you gotta kind of leave the door cracked, and I wasn't having a lot of luck with it. So I wound up just going for the dehydrator. And it's kind of funny because I'm also in the process, some of you had asked me, can you dehydrate bone broth? So I'm dehydrating bone broth too, and I've got so much going on in that with really giving my dehydrator a workout. But if this is the type of thing that you like doing and you like dehydrating things to add to your food storage, I think probably when it comes to making a mirepoix soup base, then you're most successful using the dehydrator. Okay, well now that all that update is out of the way, what I'll show you what I like to do is when I mix this together, a traditional mirepoix is 2 parts onion, 1 part carrot, 1 part celery. So I'm going to start, and we'll see how many we get out of this. So about 1 cup, and you don't need to be super precise, but I'm just going to see how many I've got in here. That's 2 cups, 3 cups. I think this will be, I'm going to get a spoon and just fill this up. And that's 4. Okay, now these I'm just going to save just to have separate as dehydrated onions. So that's 4 cups onions. So now to that, since it's a 2-1-1 ratio, I'm going to add 2 cups of carrots. So that's 1 cup, and I'll do 2 cups. And then that I'll save, you know, just to use separate as carrots. And now we'll do the 2 cups of celery. 1, 2. Perfect. And now I'm just going to mix all this up together, and then I'll show you how we put it in the jar and seal it. Now I'm going to spoon this into this jar, and then I'll show you how I will seal it with the little handheld food saver device. I don't know if you've seen that in some of my other videos. That thing is so clever. And I'll show you how we'll add a little oxygen absorber to really keep this nice and crunchy and ready on our pantry shelf. Now with these that I have left over, I can either make the ratio to make a smaller amount for, you know, to put in a smaller jar that I can just put in my pantry, you know, and just use one of the, put it in a jar with just one of these white storage lids, not worry about making it airtight, because, you know, I'll be using it you know, periodically as I'm cooking. Or I can just put them in separate jars, put them in my pantry, because, you know, I would use these. I make a lot of soups and so on and so forth. But for this one, so say we wanted to, you know, maybe store this a little longer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little oxygen absorber in, and then I'm going to put a canning lid on like this, and then I'm going to use this food saver gadget, which is just so fun. You take this part, and it goes right over the jar. This usually, you know, sometimes comes with the big food saver machine, or maybe sometimes in a separate accessory package. But now they have this little gadget, so you don't have to haul out the whole big machine, and it's fantastic. So it's got a little hole here, and then the jar lid attachment, you know, has a little hole on top, and you just put it over. And I don't know if you'll be able to 100% hear the change in sound, but you can start to hear a little change in sound as it's sucking all the oxygen out. And then you'll see the tight seal that we're going to make. So if you use one of these at home, you'll hear a little bit of change in sound, and it kind of indicates that it's gotten out all the oxygen. And then you'll also see, because this gadget has made a very tight attachment itself to the lid that you use to suck the air out. Oh, see? And then you can hear the seal come off. And then you just pull this off. And then you have this wonderful tight seal. I cannot pull that off. Look at that. It's a beautiful seal. And now I have this wonderful Mirepoix mix, soup base, whatever you want to call it, that I can put in my extended pantry. And when I use up all of this, I've got this ready to go. If you'd like to learn more about dehydrating, be sure to subscribe to my channel and then click on this video over here where I show you how to dehydrate sourdough starter and a lot more. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.